These college football teams got absolutely screwed when it comes to their 2024 schedules. Scheduling in college football and in college sports in general is a chaotic art of sorts. There's so many factors that go into it that are so diverse, creating a wide gap between the easiest and hardest schedules in college football. So in this video, we're going to be looking at the 10 college football teams that are facing the hardest schedules for 2024. Coming in at number 10, we have Nevada. Nevada's the only Group of 5 team in this list, and I just had to include them simply because of how uniquely difficult and challenging this schedule is for a Group of 5 team. Yes, you could technically find some power teams, many power conference teams with tougher schedules in terms of the weight of their opponents, but this schedule is just such a unique one for the Group of 5. They play 3 power conference teams, SMU, Oregon State, and Minnesota, which is already pretty difficult and a lot more than other Group of 5 teams are doing. They have a 13-game schedule because of that road game at Hawaii. They have to play last season's American, Sunbelt, and Mountain West Conference champions. So SMU, Troy, and Boise State all on their schedule, including the runner-up from the Mountain West last season in UNLV. They also have to play Fresno State, Air Force, and Georgia Southern. Those are all going to be conference contenders. And you look, their 3 easiest games are Eastern Washington, a team that nearly upset Fresno State and has a reputation for knocking off FBS teams, Hawaii, and Colorado State, which Hawaii and Colorado State may be winnable. They do have to go at Hawaii, and Colorado State's a team that I think is pretty good. So for Nevada, not a lot of wins looking like in the schedule. It's going to be tough to navigate, especially with a first-year head coach. Coming in at number 9, we have the Michigan Wolverines. For Michigan, they took a lot of flack last year for how easy their schedule looked on paper until the back half of the season. They're not going to have any such criticisms this season. They have Texas in just their second game of the season, who's going to be a top 4 team in terms of playoff odds. And you know who else will be top 4? Oregon and Ohio State, both on the schedule as well. So essentially, Michigan's playing 3 of the 4 projected playoff teams for this upcoming season. They have 5 projected top 25 opponents. The other ones that are probably being projected in that range being USC and another one in possibly Washington, maybe getting respect for last season. And they have the game at Ohio State, which makes things more difficult. Definitely could be tougher in terms of the games they draw at home and away. Only 4 true road games, which will be nice for them, and they have buys in good spots. But in terms of the absolute best of the best in their schedule in Texas, Oregon, and Ohio State, not many teams have a tougher Big 3 on their schedule. Coming in at number 8, we have the other team from the national title game, the Washington Huskies. Now, at first glance, the Huskies start to their schedule not bad at all. Weber State, Eastern Michigan, Washington State, Northwestern, all at home. That's a pretty soft start, but it's from there that the schedule really heats up. 5 projected top 25 opponents from that point on in the season. Michigan probably going to be top 25, Iowa, USC, Penn State, Oregon, and they have 9 teams on their schedule in total who went above 500, and it's that back half where they play 5 road games in their last 8 games that could really take a toll on this team. That is just a tough end to the season that definitely matches up with that gauntlet they had to play in the Pac-12 last season. At number 7, we have the first of many SEC teams on this list, South Carolina. They have 7 projected top 25 opponents on their schedule this upcoming season. That's more than half of the schedule. They do get their cupcake games. They do get to play Wofford. They do get to play Akron. Old Dominion going to be a little easier as well, especially compared to the rest of the schedule. But outside of that, my goodness, road games against Bama, Oklahoma, Clemson, one at Kentucky early in the year, and back-to-back road games in October in that Bama-Oklahoma stretch. Things are just really tough. And you also just hate to get that road game at Vanderbilt because that's when you circle as like an easy win, but going on the road just adds an extra layer of maybe susness for a team that's just trying to get to a bowl game at least or turn in a positive direction. For South Carolina, the wins are going to be difficult to find. At number 6, what about Georgia Tech? Their 2024 schedule is shaping up to be pretty difficult. I think the most notable aspect, there's 11 teams on this schedule that made a bowl game in 2023. The only team that didn't on their schedule is VMI, who's an FCS team. That's all that kept them. So every bowl-eligible team made a bowl game last year on their schedule. That's nasty work. Road games at Syracuse, Louisville, and Virginia Tech that are all trap games by teams that are going to be fringe top 25. At the very least, there's 5 projected top 25 teams in the schedule. And then the non-conference having to play Notre Dame and Georgia. It's just a slap in the face. At least they get a couple of those games at neutral sites, but it feels like that's more taking away from a potential home game for them. So really, I don't even know if that's a huge plus. Georgia Tech definitely has their work cut out for them, but they're used to a pretty difficult schedule as they routinely are playing Georgia at the end of the season. At number 5, we have another first-year coach in Deshaun Foster with his work cut out for him with the UCLA Bruins. They have 6 projected top 25 opponents on this upcoming schedule, including 2 non-conference road games, which is unusually high for a power team at Hawaii, at LSU. Kind of tough. They've just got a lot of trap games on here too. The Rutgers game, the Nebraska game, the aforementioned Hawaii game as well, and they don't have a single 2-game homestand until very late in the season in November, which at that point will probably be much appreciated, but at the same time, you could really use that early in the season, especially with a newer coach and what's projected to be a pretty new shaken up roster. UCLA could have some trouble finding their way. At number 4 is the Georgia Bulldogs. This is another team that took a ton of flack for their weak schedule in 2023. Now, it was still probably harder than most team schedules, but for Georgia standards, they just weren't really tested in the regular season. This year, it's not going to be an issue. 5 projected top 25 opponents on this schedule. They open the season with Clemson in the non-conference. Georgia Tech at the end of the year, still a team that's improving under Brent Key. That's at least, I think, a bowl team, but you get into the weeds of this schedule. 3 road games that are massive at Texas, Ole Miss, and Alabama. Like 3 of the biggest games in the SEC this year. Georgia has to play them all on the road. 2 neutral site games, which take away home games for Georgia. And then 2 of their other home games are against UMass and Tennessee Tech, which, yes, easy wins, but you almost feel like they're wasting those home games. The only meaningful games they're going to get at home are going to be Tennessee, Georgia Tech, Mississippi State, and Auburn. So it feels like a lot of the important games that Georgia's playing this season are going to be away from home, and that's a dangerous pastime. We will stay in the SEC for number 3, and we'll actually stay in the SEC for the rest of this list. Number 3 is Oklahoma. 6 projected top 25 opponents. Talk about a rude awakening and welcome to the SEC. Houston and Tulane in the non-conference, both sneaky teams and sneaky tough games. And then in SEC play, road games at Ole Miss, Missouri, LSU. That's tough. Bama and Texas, both going to be top 5 in title odds. They have to play both of them. Texas is going to be a neutral site game as usual. And then there's even some trap games in the SEC. No weeks off. Auburn, South Carolina. Definitely some trap games to look out for as well. They do have the game versus Maine. They do have the game versus Temple. Houston and Tulane, they'll probably still be favored by at least double digits in. But outside of that, man, the SEC does not forgive and does not forget. And Oklahoma is going to have a really tough slate in their first season. At number 2, we have an SEC team struggling to get their footing, Arkansas, and it just gets tougher. 6 projected top 25 opponents playing at Oklahoma State. One of the teams that's going to be favored to win the Big 12 in the preseason is just going to be really tough for Arkansas. They do have UAB. They do have Arkansas Pine Bluff. They do have Louisiana Tech. That's going to be a nice break. There is nothing else forgiving them. They have games at Mississippi State and at Auburn, a couple of games they feel like they can get. So getting those on the road, that's just a really tough break. And then you look at some of these home games. How many home games are they going to be able to win this season? They host Ole Miss and Texas and LSU and Tennessee. Oh my goodness, those are some nasty games. Neutral site against Texas A&M, ending the season at Missouri. That's a projected top 25 team. Arkansas just did not get any punches pulled with this schedule. Coming in at number 1, we have poor Florida. It's one of those schedules that is so jarring to look at that it's actually gone viral this season. They have 7 projected top 25 opponents at least. That's if you're being conservative. In the non-conference, they play Florida State, Miami, and Central Florida. A couple of teams that are going to be projected to be competing for an ACC title. And then UCF, who's probably going to be a high-end Big 12 team. That is no favors in the non-conference. Yes, they get to play Samford, but let's look at that conference schedule. Georgia, LSU, Ole Miss, Florida State, Tennessee, Texas. I name you all these teams, and what if I told you they played all of them nearly in sequence to end the season, and they're all top 10 in title odds? They might be favored in one game, maybe that game against Kentucky after October 5th. Outside of that, there are no guarantees here. Florida could literally be like the 11th best team in the country next season and still go 6-6 or 5-7. I think that is utterly ridiculous, Florida just going to be in for a tough ride in 2024. You just got to pray for the Gators because that's honestly the only thing that could help them is divine intervention. That does it for my list of the top 10 toughest schedules of 2024. Let me know if there's any other schedules that I didn't mention that you think are either underrated, sneaky tough, or just one of the toughest schedules and was snubbed from this list. Probably going to be making one of the 10 easiest schedules in college football, maybe easiest power schedules in college football. But as usual, if you enjoyed the content, go ahead, like, comment, subscribe, do all the good stuff, and I will see you guys later.